video. This is video number 2 in our series on creating a legacy truck from a Lone Star, International Lone Star. So in our first video, we had the chassis and we had it imported into Blender. So now we need to modify this chassis to work with our truck. And I'm not really sure exactly how to do this video, so what I thought I'd do is just go ahead and just start modifying the trucks and tell you what I'm doing and what I'm thinking as I'm modifying this truck. But the first thing is we gotta separate all these pieces. So if you look over here under your collection, you'll see all this where it says chassis 6x4L. This is the root object, and then everything under this root object is called just basically the objects. And some of these are hookups, and these pieces here, these are the actual objects that you see in the game. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hide what I'm not using or what I'm not working on. Okay, so all this is contained to this one object piece, piece 0. And what I want to do, I want to at least separate the frame out from the running gear and the engine and all the braces and everything. And it's not that hard to do. So if you go into the side mode and you scale in, and then make sure that you're in the edit mode. If you hit your tab, this is object mode. As you can see up here, object, and then if you hit tab, it goes into edit mode. So make sure that you're in edit mode. And then right up here, it tells you what part of the wireframe that you're working with. If you, this first one is solid one, this is the face, and this is lines, and then this is vertices. So if we look at the wireframe and we look at it invisibly, and if you scale in, you can see these little dots, these individual dots right here. So if you highlight it, it highlights the dot and it shows you the lines that are connected to the dots. And then if you select lines, it shows you the individual lines. And then for faces, let me get a good, so we take it, let's take it off. Alright, so if we look at this frame, this right here, this is the face. So we just highlighted the face. Okay, and I mostly work with the vertices because they're easier to work with, in my opinion. But you'll have to learn to use all 3 of them when you're separating parts. So frame, and I've got it selected to the vertices, so I want to highlight all the vertices on the back side of this frame, and I have to be in the invisible mode. And I'll show you why. If I try to highlight the vertices here, and you'll notice that we can highlight it, but we only highlight certain parts. So these did not get selected, this didn't get selected, these over here didn't get selected. And that's because it's not transparent. You can't see through it. So this toggles your X-ray. So you put X-ray on. Now you go through the whole truck frame, and if you highlight it again, now you see you've highlighted both sides. So you went straight through the frame. And you can scan in as far as you like. Notice I've highlighted the vertices in the frame. Okay, so the next step is I want to make sure that everything that's attached to these vertices are selected. All the lines that are attached to these vertices are selected, and the way you do that is Control L. Alright, so that's Control L, and if you'll notice, it highlights just about everything that's connected to that frame. Now there's some things that didn't get, so we'll need to highlight those. And you can see there's faces in here that didn't get highlighted. So if you'll hold down your Shift key, Shift, and then highlight it, we just highlighted this part of the frame. And if we go to this side and hit Shift again, we can highlight the rest of it. So now we have just the frame that's highlighted, and I want to duplicate that before I do any modifications to it. I want to duplicate it. So the way you duplicate it is Shift D. Okay, and once you hit Shift D, there's your duplicate frame, and you can move it around. But I do not want to move it from its zero location. So I'll right click, it puts it back to where it was, and I want to leave it there, but I want to make a copy of it. So I want to make an individual copy. Right now it's still a copy within that one object piece, so I want to make it a different object piece. So I select P, and then I want to separate it out by selection. So I click selection, and now you'll look up here, it made me a separate piece. Okay, so if I hide the first piece, then all I have is the frame. Okay, and so this is the frame of our truck with nothing else attached to it, because this is what I want to stretch out, because I have to stretch it out for the legacy. Alright, and then that's the rest of the truck. So now what I want to do, I want to separate the frame from the running gear, because I want the running gear separate. So what I need to do is I need to duplicate this whole piece here. So if I select it and if I select it and hit Control D, let's see. I'm sorry, if I select it and hit Shift D, it makes a copy of. So right click it and put it back in the spot. You want everything to stay in the same spot. Alright, so now I have a piece that I can strip the frame out of, and I'm going to strip the frame out the same way. I'm going to make sure I put it in edit mode. Remember, tab for edit. And then I'm going to make sure and I make sure that X-ray is on, and I'll select the whole frame, and then Control L to select every part on that frame. And I know that it did not select in the front. And the way I know this because I did this before. So I got to highlight those different, and you can see that the faces are not selected. So there are just certain vertices that I have to. Alright, so now you see I've selected part of that running gear, and I do not want to select that. So what I need to do, I need to hit Control and then drag across it. So Control deselects it, Shift selects. Alright. And then let's get this other side. Alright, now I should have the complete frame selected, and I just want to delete this frame out. So to delete the frame, select X, and then you want to delete all the vertices. So just hit vertices. And now all the frame has been. Okay, so this is the original piece, the one that we didn't change. We'll hide that. This is the frame rail. And this is our copied piece with the frame, with no frame. Okay, so now we have the individual parts. Alright, so let's hide that. Now let's put our frame back up here. So here's our frame. Alright, good. Okay, so everybody should have this frame. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to save this piece right here. And let's see. And I'm just going to call this frame 1. And I am going to save it to my folder. So video tutorials, mod files, and let's see, let's create a new folder. We'll call this truck parts. So now we saved that. So if Blender crashes, we've already got this saved. All right. So now I'm thinking about how do I want to customize this frame, because this is basically the thing that most of us will see when our truck goes down the road, and so I want this frame to look as good as possible. And if you will look at the Freightliner frame, let me show you that. This is the frame from the Freightliner, and the International Lone Star was released probably about a year before the Freightliner was, and you can tell that the difference in detail is amazing between the two frames. This is one of the airbags from the Freightliner. You can tell it has the trademark on it. You can tell it looks like a rubber airbag. If you look at the frame, it's got the frame tags to it. If you look at this piece of metal, it looks like it's stamped steel. There's just a lot of detail with this Freightliner frame. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use some parts from this Freightliner frame on. That way I don't have to spend a whole lot of time detailing. And I also like the slope that this frame has. This I've already got bumpers made for this type of frame, so the bumpers that I have, the rear bumpers, they'll fit on this frame really well, where on this frame where it's squared off in the back, it will not fit. I would have to modify this frame, and that's an option. We can modify this frame and make it look like this frame, that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm probably end up taking this bracket right here off and putting it on my other frame, and then I'm probably going to make my International Lone Star frame have this taper here, and that's where your modeling skills will come in. But for right now, I need to find out what length to make my frame. So I'm going to measure this one. I'm just going to measure the wheelbase, or you can measure the frame, whichever way you choose. It's probably easier just measure the frame. So let me do that. So over here on the side, you have these measuring tools, and I'll click on it and I'll just start from the end of the frame, and I will just measure there, and you'll see it's 10.7914 meters, and I want that in feet because I've always just did feet and inches. And so if you go here where it looks like a chemistry set, you'll see a tab that says units. Just change this to imperial, and now it's in feet. So that frame is 35.4047 feet long. And if you want to do the wheelbase, you have to go from the front hub to the middle of the two back hubs. So let's see what the wheelbase is, or close to it. So if you do another one, so it looks like the wheelbase is approximately 26.75. Let's say 26 feet and 3/4, 26.75 feet, which would probably be 26 feet, about 8 inches. So, alright, we'll take that measurement. We'll come back to our frame here. Now, stretching the frame is not hard at all, and it's done almost the same way as when we selected this whole frame to separate the parts. Put it in edit mode, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take this bottom piece out. I make sure vertices selected. I select the middle vertices, hit Control L, selects the whole piece, and X vertices. Okay, and we got some stragglers. And the reason why I had stragglers because I did not have it in X-ray mode. Control L, X, vertices. Alright, so now I've got that bottom piece. The only thing I have is the frame rails. Alright. So, let's see, the other frame was 35, let's say 35 feet, 6 inches. We'll just go with that. So, we'll get our measuring tape out. Let's go to modeling. Oops, did not have my tape measure selected. Alright, so let's see what that measures out to. We need to change it to feet. Imperial. Alright, so that line is 35.8 feet, and we were looking for, what was it? 35.4. So that's pretty close. But if I want to change this, I can just grab it and just change it. So we'll just change it to 35.5 feet. Thereabouts. Alright, good. So then what I do, I just kind of look about where the end of the measuring is, because once you go to select, this will disappear. So go back to select, and we'll select the vertices on the end. And then what I want to do, I want to pull those vertices out until I get to my 35 feet. So to grab them, you hit G for grab. And then we're going to pull them in the Y direction. So I hit Y, and then you'll see the Y direction lights up, and you can see I can pull it shorter, I can make it longer. Alright, so I'm going to pull this until I'm close, and then I put my tape measure back up, and I'm not quite there yet, and so I'll go back and I'll select and pull it a little bit more. G and Y. Then look at my tape measure, and that is pretty close. Okay, now I wanted to taper the frame, so I can't go quite to the end of the tape because I'm going to have to add some to it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to back this up a little bit, G and Y, and let me tell you what, I'm just going to leave it right there for a second, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to get this Freightliner frame out so I can use it as a template. Alright, so I need to take this Freightliner frame out. And I'll separate it like I did the other ones. Make sure we're in X-ray mode. We'll tab into edit mode. Alright, now looks like I've already done this. Okay, so I'll take make sure that everything is highlighted, and it looks like it is. Okay, so now what I want to do, remember, make a duplicate of this frame. Kit of the frame, go Shift D, and now I have a duplicate, and then I right click, put it back in place, and then you want to hit P, and then selection. So now I made a copy, and you can see it here, a copy of that frame. And now what I want to do, I want to copy that frame, so I'll copy it, and then I will take it back to where this is my lonestar frame, and then I want to just paste it. Just come under your collection, just right click and hit paste, and now I have my frame. Alright, you can see they're pretty darn close. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to select this frame, and then I'm just going to move it up a little bit. So I hit G and then Z axis, and I'll slide it up. That's pretty close. Now I could go ahead and just use this frame on my lonestar, but I want to show you a little bit how to do a little bit of modeling. So that's why I'm not going to do that. So now I need to go back to my other frame. So let's see. Now I can just click on it to select it. Now I'm in object mode, so I go into edit mode, I hit tab. I will select, oops, may be in selection. Okay, so I just select these back vertices, which they're already selected. I have mine unselected. Okay. So now we're going to drag this frame back. So we'll G in the Y direction. And what I want to do, I want to drag it back to where it starts curving, right here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to extrude those vertices out to make this tail section. So to extrude it, you hit E, and then I'm going to still go in the Y direction, and then I'm going to extrude it out. There. All right. So I've got the pieces extruded out, and it's the same length as the other one. And now I just need to make the taper. So what I'll do, I'll highlight only, and then I am going to grab them and move them in the Z axis, and then it should taper. So now I have the taper. So if we go down, we hide the Freightliner frame, you can see that we've got somewhat of a similar shape. But let me explain what's going on here. When I extruded those vertices out, the material on it stretched down this tail section, because it's kind of like looking at one. It's like one sliver, and then I took that sliver and I just stretched it all the way to the end. So that material looks like it's stretched, and that's why it looks a little bit different. So what we need to do, we'll fix the materials on this later, or we can assign different material. We can make this a different piece and assign different materials to it. But that's why it looks a little bit different, is because we stretched it, the tail section on it, and then we changed the shape of it after it was already mapped. So we'll have to remap that to fix that, but that can come later. Alright, so on this other piece, this piece right here, I like to get that cross member here and the bolts, and add that to my frame. So remember, before we do anything, we always want to make a copy of anything that we're modifying. So I'll hit Shift D, and I have another copy of the Freightliner frame. So I'll select my copy, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to hide this other frame. I'll make sure to, okay, I just have the Freightliner frame selected. Okay, so what I need to do, I need to strip out that cross member there. So I'm going to do this the same way that I did the other one. I'm going to into edit mode, and I think the best way to do it is probably grab it from the front of the frame. So we'll look at the front of the frame. Then I'll select these vertices, hit Control L to select them all. Okay, now everything should be highlighted except for that cross brace and that bolt. Alright, so let's see, we'll X, and we delete the vertices. Alright, so let me hide this other frame and we'll see how we did. Okay, so we got a little bit of the old frame left. So let's see. Let's see. Control L, X, vertices. We got, looks like we still got some stragglers on that other frame. Alright, so let's see if we can't get rid of those. And Control L, X, vertices. Remember, I just want that cross brace. And I gotta be careful because you can see here I deleted some parts that I didn't want to delete, so I have to undo that. I guess those parts were missing. Alright, so that part looks good. So let's go over this. Alright, I'm sorry if I can't, it's hard for me to think and talk at the same time, so what I'm trying to do is get rid of the parts of the frame that I don't want. Only thing I want is the bolts and that cross brace on the back. So that's what I'm attempting to do right now. So I just highlight it, everything that I can I think is on that back frame, and then I'm just but it looks like for some reason there's a section here that looks a little off, and this side doesn't do it. That may be, I may be able to fix that if it. Okay, so let me, I guess I need to undo it until that'd probably be, I could probably model it to put it back in there, but probably the best thing to do is just figure out when I accidentally deleted it. So that's what I'm just undoing until I can get back. it may not even copied when I copied the whole frame. So let me look at this. Okay, so that section was missing when I copied the whole frame. So what I'm just going to do, and that's why modeling takes so long, is because of stuff like this. So I have to go back to my original Freightliner frame, and I have to make sure that I don't take all this. The only thing I want to see is the frame. Let me see if that piece on that cross member is missing. If it is, I can't. Yeah, look, it still looks like it's missing in this piece. So let me go back to the original piece. So if I can find it. Let's see. Yeah, and this looks like it's may have been a bad model. Let me just import. And check my file path. Make sure you always check your file path. And this shows the wrong file path. So let me get the right file path. So desktop, and then I got my Freightliner. Mod file. There we go. Got that truck mods, Freightliner mod. Okay, some project path. That's the way all my materials and everything copies over. And then I want to import. And then go back to my base. Vehicle, truck, Freightliner. Then what I'm just going to get a chassis that I've never worked on before. So this should basically be the short chassis. And like I said, the only thing I really need is that cross. For right now. Okay. So what I'll do, I just hide everything that I don't need except for that frame. Alright, so there's a frame, so I hide everything else. That didn't work well. Let me see. This might work a little easier. Alright. Yeah, remember put it in X-ray mode or you won't get everything across. Alright, so Control L, and that highlights the whole frame. Alright, and then Shift D, enter to copy, and then P by selection to make as a new piece right here. Alright, so there's our frame. So now we'll just copy it. Alright, there's a Freightliner frame, and now we need to strip out that brace. Now I have to go back and copy the bolts, it looks like. But that's nothing. Okay, so let's get that brace out. X-ray mode. Let's go from the front. I think that will be easier. Alright, so then I'm just going to try to take that frame out. I hope it's not a modeling. Still can't tell just yet. So let's see. Control L, X, vertices. Okay. This is X vertices. All right, so this looks good so far. Make sure that we didn't delete anything. Yeah, so that looks really good. So let's see, let's look at materials. Make sure there's our material. Alright, so now we just need to put this on our frame for a Lone Star. So let me find the frame for the Lone Star again. That's the running gear. Is that our frame? Yep, that's our frame. Alright, so take that piece. And we slide it back. G. Whoops. I don't know if you can see that or not, but all the vertices didn't get selected. So before I click it, I hit right click and puts everything back together, and the reason why it didn't get selected is because I do not have it in X-ray mode. So let me show you this again. If you hit G, Y, and move it, you can tell that all the vertices didn't. See how it's stretching it out? Alright, so in order to get all the vertices, I have to go into X-ray mode. Now I have all the vertices. And then I hit GY, and now it will go back to where I need it. just need to get it into place. Go GZ, move it up. G1. And there you have it. We have put that brace into our frame. And you can tell we got some gaps here, so what we'll do, we'll just scale it out to fill those gaps. So we'll go back into edit mode. So to scale, you hit S, and then we want to scale in that X direction. So we hit X, and then you can see the red line, so we're going to scale in the X direction, and we'll pull it out. There. So now we scaled that piece in the X direction, and she does look good. Alright, so we got our frame stretched, and we've got one brace in it. We need to get some bolts, which those are kind of pretty easy. We can just go back to our frame, and we'll just find where the bolts are. Alright, so here's this piece right here. This is, nope. So here's our bolts. Alright, so what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to copy one bolt. And then I am going to, like I said, Shift D, Enter P by selection. And now I have this bolt that's copied. Copy. We'll go back to our Lone Star frame. We'll paste the bolt, and as you can see, there it is. Make sure we're in X-ray. Okay. Pull it back. Alright, and we'll zoom down on top of the frame. Alright, looks like it's too low. Okay, so you can tell that it's too low. So what we need to do, we need to raise that up some. So let's see. We'll go put it in X-ray mode. There it is. We'll select it and go G, Z direction, and then we'll raise it up until it sits just on top of that frame. Alright, you see it's a little bit off, so what we want to do, we want to rotate that along the And then we're going to just rotate along the x-axis a little bit. And then GZ. There. Alright, so we have one bolt in the frame. And then we want to duplicate that bolt. So we'll go back to the X and we'll hit Shift D to duplicate. And then we'll go in the Y direction. And the Z direction. And then we'll make sure it's on top of the frame. Okay, now if I want to I'm going to select both of those, and then I'm going to Shift D, and I'm just going to carry them to the X direction and put them in the center. And there's my 4 bolts. So I have my 4 bolts in the frame. I got the cross member. So far everything is looking good for the frame. So I've got it stretched out to where I want it. I got the tail of the frame the way I want it. I got the cross member brace in. And then there's a tag. If you look, let me go back to the Freightliner. Here's the tag, and I want to get it. So if I go, so what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to copy this frame. And I can't tell if I got it all. Let's see. No, see it. You can tell that I didn't get it all. So then Control L. All right, now I got it all. So you see how all the faces, this one right here don't look right. So making sure I got all the faces. Okay, so that looks like I got everything for the tag frame. I hit Shift D to copy it, enter. Then P, I'm going to copy it by selection. And let's see. And there it is, copy. And I'll go back to my other frame. And G, move it along to Y. GZ and GY. Alright, so there's a tag frame. I got a tag frame on it, and I like the way that looks. Alright, so my thinking here is I don't want this frame to be attached to this chassis. I want to make this frame be attached to the stock tail lights. So what I need to do, I need to make this its own root object. See, this piece right here is called an orphan because it doesn't belong to a root object. If you look, all these pieces belong under this chassis 6 by, so they belong, this is the root object. So everything underneath that root object belongs to it. So if I move this piece, I can move this piece inside the root object and it would belong to the chassis root object. But because I want this to be a separate piece so that I can attach it to the, say, the stock tail lights. Say if you want to run the lonestar with the stock tail lights or the standard tail lights, this tag frame appears. But if you want to put the optional chrome or painted bumper on it, then I can't have this tag be there because that would interfere with the other bumpers. So that's why I can't leave it attached to this frame. So what I need to do is make it its own root object. And to do that, I select the piece I want to create a root object for. I select it and then I go to my SCS tools and I hit add, and where it says root object, just select root object. So now this tag has become a game object or root object, ever how you want to say it, game object or root object, and it's attached to the 0 location. So if you click, trying to explain this, but when you create a root object, wherever the cursor is where the locator is going to be, so to speak. So the game object, this is the locator. It's on 0 because you'll notice the cursor intersects X, Y, and Z location, and it's at 0. Alright, so as long as this game object is at 0, it's going to put that tag frame at that place in space. It's not really attached to the chassis, it's attached to a space. So you can delete the chassis and this tag frame will always show up in this space here based on that locator. And if you'll notice that the chassis has a locator too, and it's on 0, so if I select it, you can see that the chassis 6x4 is at 0 too. Now these locators become really important later on, so it's real important to understand how they work. But every part on your truck is attached to a locator. But by the time we get done with this truck, you will understand that completely. So what I did, I made a new root object, and then I'm just going to rename this object. So double click on it and I can rename it LICPLATE. So that's the license plate. So if I go under license plate, here is the object and I can hide it. And I do want this piece right here to become part of the chassis, so I got to make sure that I put that into the root object of the chassis. So in the way you do that, well, actually let me show you something else real quick. So I got the bolts and I have the cross brace, and I want to combine them into one piece. So the way I do that, because I don't want the bolts without the cross member there. So I'll select them both, select piece 4001, and then I'll hit shift and select the other piece, and then I will hit Control J. And once you hit Control J, just remember J for join. It joins both of those into one piece, the bolts and the cross members one piece. Okay, so now I want to make sure that this cross member stays with this chassis. Right now it's an orphan piece. If I was to save this and put it in the game, once it showed up on the truck, this piece would be missing because it's not a root object and it doesn't belong to a root object. So this is a little tricky, and it takes a little while to get used to it, but to make it easier, I always make sure that I've got this highlighted. Just turn it on, hit the eyeball, turn it on, and then you want to drag, you want to click on it, and you want to drag this piece up till you get to the root object, this root object here, and then place your triangle over the root object and then hit shift and let go, and then it places that. And like I say, it's a little bit tricky to do it if you're not used to doing it. You gotta hit the shift and click, let go of the click about the same time. But anyway, you'll notice now that it is now part of the chassis root object right here, or right here. And you could also combine that with the rail sides if you wanted to, but I'll just leave it a separate piece in case I want to modify it even more, move it, or what have you. Alright, so now we've got that done. And we still got a long way to go before we finish this chassis. So I've showed you the basics. So right now you have just, if you've got what I've got now, you have just a plain chassis. So during the next week, this is what I want you to do. I want you to select the running gear. I want you to put the cross members into your frame. I want you to have a complete chassis by next week. And everything to do that I have showed you in this video. I've showed you how to separate the pieces out. I showed you how to make a copy of the piece. I've showed you how to move the pieces. So during the next week, while you're waiting for the new video to come out, okay, this is what you can be working on. And I'd like to see a completed chassis. What I'd like to see is a chassis with all the parts on it. And hold on just a second. Let me import my legacy chassis for my Freightliner. Alright, so this is the legacy chassis that I did for the Freightliner truck that I completed a little while ago. And I want you to think about what you want to put on that chassis. But this is, when we meet again, this is what I want you to have: the running gear, the drive shaft, all your cross braces, and you can, and then be thinking about what you would like to do, whether you want the step plates, the boxes, auxiliary power unit. You know, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to put an auxiliary power unit on this lonestar truck. It's something a little bit different, and I haven't done one before. I don't know if SCS has one, so I may have to model one. But I'd like for you to just go ahead and have your frame completed. That is your homework for this week. So anyhow, that's all I'm going to show you this week. We'll pick it back up once we have a completed frame. We'll talk a little bit about materials, making decals, things like that in our next lesson. So until next week, school's out.